we're ready to start. Thank you.
Okay, perfect, perfect. Welcome, everybody. My name is Juliet. Juliet was from Gambia. I'm team leader here in the United Nations Office of the Special Advisor on Africa. We are very pleased and privileged that you have joined us in the journey to amplify the African Union theme of the year, which is on justice for Africans and people of African descent through reparations. The setting is looking at, we last week, we looked at the past, and this week we are looking at understanding the present, and next week will be interrogating the future. It's a chain, it's like we cannot move forward if we don't understand where we come from. Yet, right now, we have to know where we are to be able to anchor ourselves to move forward. We are very privileged that we have, within the Africa Dialogue series, we have this space where, for the youth voices, which is quite important for you as the young people on the continent as well as within the African descent. You have the opportunity, the privilege, and the obligation to ensure that you move this conversation forward so that the continent can transform for the better for everybody, all Africans globally. And today's theme is very benefiting for you all and for us as the organizers of the African Dialogue Series, in a way that it brings that conversation front and center where the world is today and where Africa needs to be to anchor collectively to move forward. My role is to introduce our director, who is going to provide the opening remarks so that we can, as all, be able to debate these issues. With what you have to keep in mind is that we need a call to action that is going to move us forward in a way that actions that we can all collectively take forward. And for you as the young people, this is it. It's not tomorrow, it's today that you have this obligation and responsibility as well as a privilege. I'll pass the floor to our director, Jean-Paul Adam, who is policy monitoring and advocacy director for us in the Office of the Special Advisor on Africa. Jean-Paul, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Juliette, and good morning from New York to everyone, and good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are connecting from. And thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to say a few opening remarks on behalf of Under-Secretary General Christina Duarte, the Special Advisor on Africa, on this very important theme of justice for Africans and people of African descent through reparations, and in particular, looking at it through the lens of the present, where we are today, looking at economic, social, and cultural justice for sustainable development. I think we are all painfully aware that this is a difficult global moment. Multilateralism is being challenged, and the ways of international cooperation are being, in some cases, undermined. Trade is also disrupted, and the ability to invest is something which is uncertain. This uncertainty further marginalizes Africa in terms of its institutional capacity to respond to sustainable development. But Africa's structural, institutional, and global marginalization does not begin in 2025. Its roots are based on its history of colonialism and are affected in particular by the institution of slavery. But even more problematic for Africa's current economic relations is the structure of its economy around extractive resources, particularly raw materials, and since independence with a very limited ability to industrialize. This has created a cycle of economic dependency, which restricts the ability to develop value chains nationally, but also regionally in terms of cooperation between African countries. Global power imbalances have further made these challenges more severe, with very significant impacts for development. While there are significant achievements since African countries have achieved independence in terms of political rights and even in terms of economic development, we must understand the reasons for Africa's economic structure, which was by design to feed resources to a metropole without necessarily looking at the opportunities to invest in decent jobs within the country or the development of skills, or therefore the development of a workforce that is fit for purpose in the context of a global economy which is fast evolving through technology. We need to understand the socioeconomic and environmental challenges as products of systemic global inequalities and also of governance challenges. So while African economies are among the fastest growing economies in the world, the rate of growth is not sufficient to meet the ambition of the Sustainable Development Goals or Agenda 2030. And what we are seeing as well is that as growth may accelerate, we are also seeing other externalities creating problems for African economies, especially the rise of external debt. And if we look at the period post-independence, if we look between the period of 1970 and 1987, for example, one of the most concerning aspects was the increase in the ratio of external debt to exports of goods and services, where that ratio by 1987 was in excess of 300%. This further indicates that the way in which African countries took on debt was not able to be invested to restructure their economies, but rather created a cycle whereby raw materials were exported when there was a commodity boom. This allowed more debt to be agreed to fund certain immediate needs. However, inevitably, there was a collapse in the prices of the export of these raw commodities, which then led to challenges in terms of repayment of the debt, and then leading to a cycle of boom and bust in terms of exports, which was then also mirrored in the debt crisis and successive debt crises. And in 2025, we are in a current scenario where debt is now again a major challenge for African countries, and in particular the cost of servicing that debt, which is estimated to be around $90 billion in 2024. And to put that in context, a number of African countries are paying more in terms of debt servicing than they are on health and education. If we look at, therefore, the major flows in terms of inflows as well as outflows from African countries, we are seeing that debt service is one of the largest costs that are close to 90 billion, while illicit financial flows, in particular, about 65% of that concerns trade mispricing, is around 88.6 billion US dollars. And if we just look at those leakages, they pale in comparison. They are much larger in comparison, for example, to what Africa received in 2024 in terms of official development assistance of 67 billion US dollars. So what does this mean in the context of achieving equality and in addressing the subject of reparations? One of the foremost actions that needs to be taken is to allow Africa, to empower Africa to have control over its own resources. These large figures that are leaving the continent in terms of illicit financial flows represent trade that is happening, but which is not being captured by African countries, and predominantly represent a flow of resources from Africa to the global north. Tackling these illicit financial flows should be an absolute priority in terms of addressing this question of equality and fairness in the global international financing architecture, and therefore is one of the most consequential actions that can be taken towards addressing the question of reparations. When we look towards the present situation, we can also note that Africa is a young continent. We have the largest proportion of young people in terms of any region of the world. And if we look at projections towards 2050, 73% of young people between the ages of 15 and 34 will be in Africa by 2050. And that compares, the growth level will be 73% up to 2050. And that compares to a global growth rate of only 6%. What this means is that we have a large number of young people that will be entering the jobs market. With the right deployment of skills and the right use of technology, this can be a huge opportunity for Africa, but also in the context of a global view around where centers of economic growth can come from. We must address the subjects of the institutional disadvantage that African countries face, which are the result of colonialism and slavery, to be able to truly invest in young people as a driver, not only of African prosperity, but of global prosperity. To do this, we need to look at reparations through a lens of empowerment. And this means addressing those areas which are contributing to the largest amounts of external flows from Africa. We need to be looking, for example, at a fairer process around debt, around restructuring existing debt to make it more affordable, but critically making sure that there is access to affordable and predictable sources of finance. Most importantly, this requires investing in domestic resource mobilization capacity. Secondly, we also need to take a human rights approach towards development frameworks. When we are talking about reparatory justice, we must recognize, first of all, the injustice that has been that has taken place in the context of colonialism and slavery. There has to be an acknowledgement of past injustices, and there has to be a systemic transformation. And through a human rights-based approach, it means addressing educational needs, providing access to information, ensuring that there is transparency, and also an investment in education, capacity building, skills development, and technology transfer to empower young people across the continent and to ensure that African populations and also persons of African descent have the appropriate skills and technology to be able to make use of current development opportunities. We also need to make sure that reparatory justice is aligned with these key frameworks under the United Nations, such as the Sustainable Development Goals, but also in the context of Agenda 2063. Thirdly, we also need to address cultural reparations. And this means, firstly, a recognition of the huge value of Africa's indigenous and traditional knowledge, and building on this as also part of sustainable development in African countries. And this means rather than using institutions that have been developed as a result of colonialism, but rather bringing in those traditional and indigenous contexts that can actually help to improve the effectiveness of development initiatives. If I can use an example around social protection, it is often assumed that the welfare state, as it is conceptualized in the global north, is something which is based purely, let's say, on the European model. However, we know that there are traditional methods of social protection that have existed for centuries in Africa, which include, for example, the pooling of resources and using these resources in the case of when families may face, for example, disasters. Integrating these traditional systems of social protection will be a key aspect of ensuring that there is empowerment of African populations going forward. And finally, for us to address inclusive development and reparatory justice, it requires partnerships. It means looking at the issue of reparations not as a cost, which involves a cost to be paid by perpetrators. Rather, it is a question of investment in a shared future. It means changing Africa's economic model, recognizing that the extractive model is not fit for purpose, and that it further creates risks for increased conflict in the future as resources are not properly shared among populations that are custodians of these natural resources. So addressing the question of Africa's economic model is one of the most fundamental aspects of applying reparatory justice using a human rights-based approach which recognizes the dignity of African citizens and persons of African descent, ensuring that there is inclusion, gender equality, and empowerment of young people. This is at the heart of this concept of reparatory justice, and we look forward very much to hearing from young people further actions that can be taken that allow this to take hold as part of the development discourse in 2025, looking ahead to a number of UN processes, including financing for development, but also the World Summit on Social Development. Thank you very much, and I very much look forward to the discussions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jean-Paul, for the wonderful presentation, as well as Juliette. Without further ado, I think we'll start our conversation today. Good morning and good afternoon to everyone joining us from all around the world. I'm not sure if you have access to the chat, but if you have access to the chat, I'll be happy for you to drop your flag from where you're tuning in today. I'm very honored to welcome you to this important session on the Africa Dialogue Series 2025, hosted by the United Nations Office of the Special Advisors on Africa. My name is Christine Dikonga. I'm delighted to moderate today's youth stage on the theme Understanding the Present, Economic, Social, and Cultural Justice for Sustainable Development. This conversation comes at the time when the global and the regional landscape demands critical reflection on justice, as per Mr. Jean-Paul, in all its dimensions, as we look at how systematic injustice continue to shape African reality and diasporic narrative. Our focus today is not to only reflect, but also to strategize. Our panelists are dynamic youth leader and researcher who embody the essence of innovation, advocacy, and policy acumen. They will guide us through urgent themes such as economic redress, social accountability, cultural restoration, and environmental equity. In line with the African Union Agenda 2063, the UN Economic Commission on Africa's Regional Integration Agenda, and the OOSA commitment to justice-centered development. Today's dialogue also strengthens our call for solidarity between Africa and all its diaspora in achieving sustainable, inclusive growth. So our panelists today is, as I say their name, I think we'll have them in the video spotlight. So we have Mr. Salaheddine Bakor, who is the Deputy Secretary General of the Pan-African Youth Union. We have Tosha Chanel Banenge Koyama, who is a research fellow at the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, and Valentine Sumtang Bine, who is a research fellow at the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. So without further ado, as we'll begin with the first section, which is economic justice. We recognize that, well, Jean-Paul recognized earlier that historical imbalance in global finance, trade system, and structural justice program have deeply shaped today's inequality. In collaboration with bodies like African Union and the UN Economic Commission of Africa, Africa is now mobilizing for a reparative framework. So the first question I have here today to all our panelists is, in what ways does Africa's current economic architecture reflect colonial legacies, and how can domestic resources mobilization serve as a path toward economic self-determination? And we'll start with maybe Salaheddine, if you can jump in with this first question. Thank you.
Thank you so much. My name is Salaheddine Bakour, and I currently serve as the Deputy Secretary General of the Pan-African Youth Union. And the diaspora, supporting the leadership, defending the rights, and making sure their voices shape policies that affect their lives. So how can African countries restructure their engagement with extractive industry to ensure value addition to prosperity and sustainability I think we have to start by acknowledging the obvious. Africa has been rich in resources, but poor in returns. Extractive industries still operate in ways that leave local communities underdeveloped, and young people looked out of the value chain. If we want to change that, we have to move from extraction to transformation. That means we need to renegotiate the contract with full transparency, including civil society and youth in monitoring how revenues are used, and making value addition mandatory, not optional. This is what actually I think about. And why should we export, for example, bauxite and import aluminium? Why mine lithium and then we buy back batteries, for example? At the PYU, we seen inspiring examples, young engineers, innovators, and entrepreneurs ready to move into processing, refining, and even downstream product design. But they need policy support, financing, and serious trust. If governments and companies build with youth, we will not only create jobs, but we will create industries that we can be proud of. That's for me. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for these great additions. Just to resume for you, we need to acknowledge the basic that Africa has been rich, and it's time to look in the African value chain to move from extraction to transformation. So how about you, Valentine Sumtang Bile, if you don't mind presenting yourself and answer to this question in 2 minutes. Thank you so much. Oh, actually, Tosia raised her hand. So sorry about. So should I go with Tosia, Valentine? We cannot hear you. You're on mute. Okay, go ahead, Tosia Chanel, if you don't mind answering the question. Sorry, I didn't see your hand raised.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. My name is Tosia Chanel. I'm a research fellow. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you well.
To answer the first question about how the actual economic structure refer to the colonial ones, I would like to add that African economy should be diversified. Like they should move from producing natural resources to industrialization and do many things. Like if I can, for instance, I can take the example from Cote d'Ivoire. Cote d'Ivoire is one of the first producer of cocoa, but what else can Cote d'Ivoire produce? In which sector, in which other sector that Cote d'Ivoire can produce to improve, like to diversify its economics. So that is one of the things that African countries should do, to do like the diversification of their economies, not only to produce natural resources, but they should move from natural resources to industrialization and to services. So, and about how they can mobilize resource, they can use, they strengthen their tax systems. They should broaden the system tax, and since African economies is mostly informal, so government should try to levy tax on in the informal sectors as well as the formal one, but gradually, so that the country will mobilize more resources, and the country should also take into consideration the contribution of the diasporas through remittances, and when I was working on one project in my section, we are trying to put together case studies. There is this project in Zimbabwe which they are trying to digitalize everything so that they can reduce corruption and make everything transparent for mobilizing the resources. So thank you very much.
Merci. Thank you so much, Oscar Chanel, for this intervention. And just to summarize, basically what you said is we really need to emphasize on digital transformation and ensuring that we can transform such as our remittance infrastructure, and ensuring that we also transform the informal labor into more formal labor. So the next question, sector. So the next question that I have, if Valentine can also introduce herself and answer this question in 2 minutes. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Christine. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Valentine Soumtan. I'm from Cameroon. I'm an economist, and I'm doing a research fellow at the Economic Commission for Africa at Addis Ababa. So just to add something to what Chanel said, I just want to focus my intervention on the button up of the process. Most of African countries are dependent on natural resources, highly dependent on natural resources. So to move from this sector to industrialization, it requires a lot of money, a lot of funding that which maybe some African countries don't have. So I just want to add that I think that African in general should prioritize the local value addition about the local product. So maybe we can promote investment in local refining and processing. We can also maybe support local content policy and develop industrialization after, because in my opinion, I think that the first problem of the Africa is the loss of trust in their economy, in their local value, and so they just want every time to promote the foreign local, the foreign product, and everything that come from outside. So maybe we can promote the local product first of all, and at after this process, it's important that African countries should improve their governance, because African countries are characterized by the poor institutional quality. So they can strengthen transparency and accountability so that African people can be able to trust in their system, to trust in their local product, and then to promote development, local development. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Valentine, for focusing your intervention. And from what I understand here, what you say is, yes, industrialization is great, it's amazing, but it costs a lot of money. And there's a belief here that in order to get to the industrialization, we need to get African to first trust the local capabilities, local products. So doing more internal and local promotion in order for them to, so basically a social change in the perception and how they're valuing the local product compared to the external product. And the next question here that I have here, and thank you so much for this amazing intervention here. And I go back to you, Valentine, as I understand that you're focusing your master in monetary economic. What models of financing, I mean, you talk about that during your intervention. So what models of financing reparatory justice could realistically be implemented at national and regional level? You're on mute, Valentine, you're on mute.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, so I was saying that that's the big question, how to mobilize funding, the best way to mobilize it so that we can be ensured to have an efficient economic policy. In my opinion, I think that it's the same thing. It's all about the governance. It's all about the governance because, we can get a fund, especially on natural resources rent, because we are African country have enough natural resources, so they can have rent from these natural resources. But if these rents are not efficiently allowed, I mean, all economic policy will fail. So I think that, in my opinion, we really have to improve this institutional quality so that the funding will be efficiently allowed and will be more can be promote well-being, sustainable development. And another thing that I want to add is maybe to focus some attention to human capital human, because we are young, but it's why we are what we see that we produce same thing, produce the same effect. So it's better for these countries to invest in the human capital so that young people should be aware that we have to produce local and to consume local.
Awesome. Okay, thank you very much. I think you actually then dive into one of the other questions, basically focusing on extracting our own industry, focusing on our extracted industry to ensure value addition, transparency, and sustainability. And as per you mentioned, it goes to holding the government accountable, creating local opportunity for promotion. And without further ado, we're moving to the second section, which is social and institutional justice. As the Office of the Special Advisor on Africa and the African Union Initiative increasingly focus on institutional strengthening and good governance, the role of youth in reimagining equitable system is very critical. Our next section here explores how both formal and traditional institutions can either entrench or disrupt inequalities. So the first question will go to Sarheddin Bakor. What role do institutions, both traditional and modern, play in reinforcing or dismantling inequality across the continent and the diaspora?
Thank you. So we say often, but I will repeat it. Youth are not just participants; they are partners. We have seen too many partnerships that are top-down, short-term, and driven by donors, time with the timelines, not local realities that doesn't work. And real partnership mean co-design, co-decision, and co-responsibility. I will give more an overview. Like at the PYU, the Pan African Youth Union, we work closely with regional bodies and the national youth councils. But the work, the best part is when works with partnerships. And what I mean with partnerships is invest in institutional frameworks, not just one-off projects. Youth in oversight and follow up, and transfer both capacities and power. One strong example, in some of our advocacy work, we have helped create national youth observatories to track public commitment those partnerships didn't just support youth voices, they protected public trust. And partnerships must help us build institutions that outlast funding cycles and that start with youth being in the room from the beginning and not as an afterthought, like actually we just bring them because we need to balance or we need youth to be part. But no, we need to include youth in the decision making process as the key partner. We can't actually now talk about any subject, any topic, and we don't include the youth from the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you very much for, to your point, it's very important to include youth for from the beginning, as per we say, by youth for youth. And I think I have Valentine who raised their hand. But before I get to you, Valentine, let's get Tosia to, if she can, if she has something to add on before I get to you, Valentine. So sorry about that. Tosia Chanel, do you have anything to add here on this? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you for giving me the floor. Is the question about the institution and inequality? So what I will say is that institutions are the rule of game that guided relationship between people in the society. So depending on how institutions are or the rules are, it will affect, it can deepen inequalities or dismantle it. For instance, traditional institution that we had in Africa, it was patriarchal, which means it was it was gender basis, meaning that men have the power to decide and women do not. In this case, it creates inequalities. And even in some culture in Africa, there are some ethnic groups that are considered as slaves and others ethnical group are considered as the royal ones. So the ethnic group that are considered as slaves, they must serve the ethnical group that are considered as royal. This all bases create inequalities in the societies. And in modern institutions, we have like the colonial rules, which was exclusive. Everybody were not partaker of the institutions. So this can create inequalities. I can say about how institutions can dismantle inequality is the inclusion of everyone, every groups and every communities in the process. When we talk about inclusive political and economic institution, we should consider women which are really like most often excluded from the discussion. We should include also youth, and we should also include every community to put them to trust in what the institution are going to do. If I can, for instance, take an example, like in Kenya, usually before they use this culture about feminine genital mutilation, but with the understanding that the elder people have come to it, now it's progressively taking out from their culture. So it's helping to include everyone, even youth and women. It's what I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shoshana, for this intervention on, at the same time, including youth is also important to have women at the center of the conversation. Go ahead, Valentine. I see that you have your hands up, so go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I fully agree with Chanel completely. I think that the institution are the key of development, and the major key that can promote the social cohesion. So how? Maybe I will respond to this question by distinguish formal institutions and informal institutions. So regarding the formal institutions, I think that the good quality, especially things like democracy or political stability, tend to limit the influence of narrow elite groups and redistribute political power to a larger number of people who support a well-functioning financial sector, for instance. Also, good institutions can help to reduce income inequality through the better judicial protection and limit the illicit distribution of natural resource rents. As a result, an inadequate or poor institution can alter the effectiveness of all economic policy in reducing income inequality. So, following this argument, I think that the institutional quality can affect income inequality and well-being through the tax system, social spending, or human capital, especially poor tax administration that disproportionately favor well-connected and wealthy population groups can reduce the tax base and increase income inequality. Moreover, a failing institutional quality like a failing bureaucratic, it's said to be a good quality when they promote economic development. So they have to encourage trade through reduced transaction cost and improve trust. So what about the informal institution? I really like this topic because I think that Africa is the continent which are predominated by their its cultural um, institution, highly characterized because we have a high diversification, ethnic diversification, linguistic diversification, religious diversity. So I think that it's important to take into account this part of institution, especially cultural institution can affect well-being by conditioning the perception of trust among the economic agent, especially countries with high level of trust are more likely to orientate themselves towards banking system because profit and configuration are fairly predicated. So, contrarily, economies with high tolerance of uncertainty are more likely to adopt market-based structure with more informational cost. So these are result to lower and more heterogeneous financial development. So the funding or natural financial resource that are needed to implement public policy are lower, while the income inequality are higher. And the last thing that I want to add is informal institution can also affect through the trust channel. Cultural can act by to the the gender equality perception. It can modify the people's perception of gender equality and the distribution of social role, which is highly important to understand income inequality. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this intervention. I think you really summarize a lot of the different topic which I had here. One of the questions that I was wanting to ask you, I mean, asking everyone, and I think that Toaster Chanel really touched on that point. So I'm going to ask this question to Salahaddin, knowing that he's the executive director of the Pan-African Youth Initiative. Salahaddin, in your view, what specific roles should women and youth play in cultural reparation and national identity building process?
Yeah, thank you. I'm the Deputy Secretary General, by the way.
So Deputy Secretary.
So this is the final question.
No.
All right. So Africa. So the question was about the young people to be supported to the lead justice driving reform with institutions, right?
Exactly.
So the truth is, many young Africans are already leading reforms. The real question is, are we clearing the way for them or putting more roadblocks? Support starts with access to policy-making spaces, reform committees, and public service roles. Then comes backing, mentoring programs, legal protection, funding for youth-led advocacy groups. At the POE, we are supported. We've supported young leaders who have influenced education reform, climate law, and electoral transparency, but many still face resistance or are treated as tokens. That has to end. Youth are not asking for charity. This is something that actually we need to be clear about. They are asking for tools, trust, and space to lead a reform. Becomes real when institutions are reshaped not for young people but by them. And I will be again to my previous remarks that we need to include the youth from the beginning. And we as the institution that actually gather and collaborate directly with young people across the continent, we are open to more concrete projects that actually we need to serve not only as a platform, but we need to coordinate. Because the thing is, you may find another institution or another organization that actually work on the same program, but if you all gather and we all work together on that, we will be more efficient. So this is my comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just building up on what you say here is really having the youth at the center of any initiative and having them from the start and not just at the end as a nice to have. And building on this question and also building on UNESCO's effort around cultural heritage and indigenous knowledge system. I mean, Director Jean-Paul Adams earlier talked about this and how. And that's why this section will highlight how restoring cultural dignity is vital to reparative justice, from the restitution of artifact to storytelling to creative injustice. Culture is central to healing and to development. So this question, the next question, I'm looking at Toaster Chanel or Valentina, whoever chimes in, raise their hand first. And that's really to build on the question on Jean-Paul Adams earlier. Reparation are often discussed economically, but how do cultural reparation, like the return of cultural artifacts or recognition of indigenous knowledge, contribute to the justice? I mean, Tosia, you're from Ivory Coast, and I believe Valentine, you're from Cameroon. So do you mind answering these two questions for me? Thank you very much. Whoever raised, nobody has raised their hand, so we want to give okay, go ahead, Tosia. Go ahead.
Thank you. Uh, to answer this question, I will start to say that African, they are very proud people. They they have their pride, and whenever there is this kind of reparation, it brings joy to African that like the Western is recognize their effort, their contribution to their development or to their existence. So then whenever there is kind of reparation, cultural or it's it's really a good thing for African because you there is a joy in when people recognize your effort, what you did for them. That is very interesting. And for Africa, these object or the things that they bring back, it's part of our culture. It is very part of our culture. Whenever we have it, we have a story to tell to our children. We have story to tell to our young people that we did this, that we did that. It's above economical things. It's more about the pride that we African we have. It's more about the joy that we have that we can change our narrative. The narrative that colonization is what brings us. We can change the way that we will tell our history to our children, even the way in education, we are not going to narrate the things that happened then in Europe or where else, but we are going to tell them our own history through the reparation that they are bringing us back. So thank you very much.
And how about you, Valentine? I think you're on
Okay,
mute.
okay. I just want to add that in my opinion, they can be no progress without any reconstruction. So we cannot have vision to the future of Africa without repairing the past. And when there are still visible, there are still visible impact, economic impact, cultural impact. So I think that in this context, it's important to acknowledging the past, to recognizing the past, and to recognizing the responsibilities of all parties and the importance of the African culture. So in that way, young African people can appreciate the value of cultural diversity, cultural the way of thinking, the way of just being together, and recognizing the existence of indigenous and the indigenous knowledge on one hand, and valorizing it on the other hand. So it can allow African economy to be more aware of what we can be and what can be envisaged in terms of reconstruction, and also to ensure that the economic policy are more effective. So I think that it's we can encourage the action like the return of object or trophy to the countries concerned. So it will bring joy, proud, and this type of reparation, this cultural reparation, will can act as a major level for social cohesion, social justice, and the development of Africa countries.
Well, thank you so much for adding on this. And I think for personally, this question as well, ring a bell through me as well as a descendant of Kuman Bape, Lock Priso Bell. I feel like carry a weight of disrupted legacy. To your point, Valentine, these artifacts bring personal and family connection. And Locke Prizobel, for example, was a powerful visionary in Douala leader in Cameroon in the late 19th century and what is now Cameroon. And he has played a critical role in mediating between local sovereignty and European colonial ambition during a time of intense upheaval and colonialism. So as the colonial pressure from Germany increased, Prizobel became a central figure in the resistance, not through open warfare alone, but through diplomacy, negotiation, and so forth and so forth. So the whole story was following German colonization of Cameroon. He was freed, deposed, and exiled, and many of his belongings, including cultural and spiritual artifacts, were taken and seized as a spoil of the colonial conquest. So today, these artifacts remain in Germany museum, far removed from the people and the land that they were meant to serve. They are not just objects for us, they are vessel of memory, authority, and tradition. So for my family, it's not just history, it's a living absence. These pieces represent story we cannot fully tell, ritual we cannot authentically perform, and cultural root that we were forced to reconstruct through fragments. The impact isn't abstract. It has shaped how we understand ourselves, our community, and what we've lost. Yes, that's why I really want to touch on this question. And now, as I move from the cultural reparation, I want to focus on Salahadin. How can creative industry be leveraged, to your opinion, to promote sustainable livelihood for youth and advance narrative of resilience and not victimhood?
Thank you. Thank you. So, Africa's creative industries are doing more than we realize. They are telling our stories, employing our youth, and transforming our image globally. Just if you look at the artists, the music, the Afrobeat, how it's going viral in the world. But for every success story, there are hundreds of talented young creators who can't access funding, IP protection, or platform to grow. We need to change that. Government must recognize creative work as a strategic economic sector, create public funds for fiscal incentive for youth, lead creative enterprises, and integrate art, culture, and storytelling into national development plans. At the POU, again, we have seen how creative spaces become economic hubs, but also social ones. When young filmmakers reclaim their history, when designers fuse heritage and innovation, they are not only earning a living, they are reshaping identity. And the cultural industry must be more level up and not seen as hobby or as just like I would call it like a third sector that's actually but no, if you see all the countries around the world, I can define I can see some countries that actually the economy are boosted through the creative and cultural industry. Thank you, that's for me.
And does anyone has anything to add on this question? I'm not seeing hands. Let me see if I'm seeing. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands here. No, I'm not seeing any hands here from the panelists. So yeah, so this section really, on this section 3, which was cultural and creative justice, this section explored the critical role of cultural dignity in the pursuit of reparative justice, building on UNESCO initiatives surrounding cultural heritage and indigenous knowledge system. And we emphasize on restoring cultural dignity through the restitution of certain artifacts, sacred objects, and the acknowledgement of suppressed indigenous knowledge, which is essential for achieving really true justice. That's what we're really seeking. The process of returning cultural property is not just an act of reparation, but a fundamental step in healing and empowering communities. That section also highlighted the importance of creative and justice. I mean, Salahadin discussed about this in his intervention. And particularly in Africa, we're seeing how creative industry, which is we can talk about Afrobeat, we can talk about Nollywood, we can talk about Amapiano. We see how the African rhythms and narrative and beat is moving the world along, while the restitution of cultural good as well as the preservation and promotion of indigenous arts, music, and storytelling plays a pivotal role in African identity, especially the youth identity. So I believe by fostering cultural expression, creative industry contribute to not only reclaiming our cultural identities and history that we are deliberately erased through the colonialism. I think this is also a part of how we can achieve a better regaining our creative justice. So these efforts are integral not only to cultural restoration, but also to fostering sustainable development and reconciliation in post-colonial societies where we are right now in Africa. Without cultural justice, any progress towards true equity remains incomplete. So now let's move along to our last section, which is climate and environmental justice. As we face the climate emergency, Africa's disproportionate vulnerability contrasts sharply with its really low historical emission. Yet, through the African Union, the UN climate resilience strategies, young people are driving innovation in green growth and justice-based solution. So I'm going to ask the first question, and you're welcome to raise your hand to answer that question. Africa contributes the least to climate change, but suffered the most. How should climate justice be framed within broader reparatory justice demands? Okay, go ahead, Sahadin.
Thank you. So for this part, this is where Africa has the chance to lead differently. We don't need to copy the old models of industrialization. We can leapfrog them. Africa has the youngest population in the world, and this is something that actually is totally different from what happened in other places. But for me, and more specifically, I will go directly to update the green energy potential and a huge demand for infrastructure and innovation. Let's connect the dot. Sustainable adaptation means building solar panel factories instead of just installing panels, promoting green construction, archaeology, and circular economies, and training youth to drive that transformation, not as laborers, but as entrepreneurs. And like making entrepreneurs very big, and also engineers and ecosystem builders. We have been working with regional partners to incubate youth-led green businesses and link them with public tenders and private investors. We believe climate resilience is not a burned, it's burned burden, but it's an opportunity to create the work and protect our planet at the same time. But also, when we give the big project to the northern or the northern countries, and we support more to implement the strategies and the technologies coming only from the north. So this is when we create and where we create our gap. And we need actually to rethink the African solution for Africa. And we believe that we have the possibility and we are able to do so. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And how about you, Valentine? You have your hands up.
Yes, yeah, I fully agree with that. I think that it is a critical and time-like question. Climate justice in Africa cannot be separate from the continent's historical exploitation or colonial expression. Framing climate justice as part of broader reparatory justice acknowledge that Africa's disproportionate suffer from climate change, and it's not only a technical or environmental issue, but moral, political, and historical issue. I just want to highlight that Africa contributes the less to global greenhouse gas emission. I think it's around 3%. So, but Africa suffers the most severe consequence of climate change, including food insecurity, displacement. So this disproportionate burden must be understood within the broader context of historical injustice, specifically colonialism and the exploitation of Africa's natural resources to fuel industrial growth in the, in the global north. So I think that framing climate change justice within a reparatory justice framework means recognizing that climate change is not neutral. It's not a neutral phenomenon. It is the outcome of an unequal development, environmental extraction, and global power imbalance that continue to shape African vulnerability today. So Africa's demand should be beyond calls for Africa or for climate aid and move toward reparations. So this can be include adequate or accessible climate finance, especially for loss and damage. Yeah, so reparatory justice also imply technology transfers, capacity building, or debt cancellation to freeze African economy from financial constraints worsened by climate-related disease. So I think that African nations must be empowered to lead their own adaptation and mitigation strategies, sustainable and use and food sovereignty rather than externality um, externality solution that can replicate colonial pattern of control. I think maybe we can be more resilient to climate change. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this answer. And really, it's really leaning to actually my next question that was actually going to direct to you before you raise your hand. And that question was about how can Africa's climate resilience strategy, and you will see it all comes together. How can Africa's climate resilience strategy align with its ambition for sustainable industrialization and job creation? I mean, you just talk about it.
I think that maybe I repeat myself, but I think that we should focus on the improvement of our own governance. The problem of Africa, yes, we have some issue with our history, especially about slavery and so on. But we cannot attend that the solution or our development or our well-being can come from a foreign continent. Or so I think that we should yes, we have been there has been it has been slavery, yes. So and so what? We cannot stay every time to say yes, we are like this because we are like this because. So we have to take into account this history, but to build our own structural change, and it can begin by being more have a good governance, to know that yes, what we are going to put or to do today, the next generation can suffer about it. So yeah, I think that maybe in my opinion, we should improve our governance. We should improve our state capacity so that we can be able to give access to basic things like access to electricity, access to water, something like this, and then we can be more efficient to find the solution from to climate change resilience.
Thank you so much. How about you, Tosa Chanel? Is there anything you want to add to what Valentine shared?
Okay, thank you very much. It's a very good point that Valentine made. The only thing I want to add is that Africa is very rich in terms of forest. Green development should be put in front, and even blue economy should be put in front, so that our climate resilience and then our ambition to become a developed continent will be reached. So the most important things here is that we should take into consideration our human capital, so that we can develop technologies, innovation that will go in the same way to preserve climate. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So yeah, so as Africa seeks to build a more resilient future in the face of climate change, it is crucial that its climate resilience strategy aligns with its broader ambition for sustainable industrialization and job creation, which we talked about. The continent, I mean, we have a unique opportunity to weave this objective together in a way that drives not only economic growth, but also safeguarding our natural, environmental, and also our future. So by prioritizing green technology, renewable technology, and climate smart agriculture, Africa can create new industry that not only contribute to mitigation climate change, but also generate thousands of sustainable jobs, particularly for its youth. I mean, Valentine and Tosa really, talked and highlight this initiative, which is, it's the perfect time for Africa to build its own structural change. We heard it over and over since the beginning of this panel. So moving away from external dependency and fostering a homegrown solution to its challenge by investing in our circular economy and local innovation, Africa can ensure that its industrialization is not only sustainable, but also rooted in its own capabilities, fostering local businesses, empowering community, and strengthening its industrial base. Critical to this transformation is also the role of youth, also the role of strong and effective local African government engaging with their youth that can create policy, foster partnership and provide the necessary infrastructure to this growth. Good governance is vital for ensuring that the benefit of sustainable industrialization are equitably distributed amongst our communities, resources are managed responsibly, and that there is accountability in all climate-related initiatives. With good local governance, Africa can better manage its climate risk and turn challenge into opportunity for innovation and development. I mean, this approach encourages not only innovation, but also promote local businesses and strengthen the continent capability to withstand the impact of climate change. So by focusing on African-led solution and empowering local government to take the lead, the continent can create a robust foundation for both environmental and economic resilience. So as we conclude this panel, as we approach the conclusion, we want to reflect. We want to reflect on the role of the global Black diaspora and African solidarity in shaping reparatory justice, which is the main topic of today's panel. Institutions like the United Nations Special Office of the OASA, CARICOM, and the Global Reparation Movement are calling for coordinated action between Africa and its diaspora. So this question is for each panelist, and you'll have 2 minutes each to answer this question. How can African and people of African descent bridge the geographic gap and work collaboratively towards reparatory justice? And I will start with Salahuddin.
Thank you, Christine. This is a personal because the gap between the continent and the diaspora is not just historical; it's emotional, it's institutional, but it's also bridgeable. Reparatory justice must be about more than return of artifacts or financial compensation. It's about reconnection of memory or of identity, of purpose. Young people from both sides are already funding each other through art, activism, and digital platform. We need to scale that into structured spaces, joint programs, shared histories, co-created advocacy. This is actually what can make the difference. And we are pushing for a global Pan-African youth platform at the PYU, one that brings together youth from Kinshasa to Kingston, from Nairobi to New York, to design solution, challenge injustice, and image futures together. And we can imagine that happen in one platform. Because in the end, Pan-Africanism must be a practice, not a slogan that actually just people repertory justice is not just about fixing the past, it's about building a future together. This is something really, really important. I don't know if I can conclude now or you give me the floor later.
You can conclude now.
All right, thank you.
Actually, I will give you the floor later.
Right.
Next one, just keep it short and sweet. Tosia, go ahead. Tosia Chanel.
Okay, thank you very much for giving me the floor. How can Africans and people of African descent bridge the geographic gap and work collaboratively toward reparatory justice? I will start by saying that it First, by the mutual understanding. African, we are one people. We have the same history for most of our countries, so we should understand each other. Each other, either from the diaspora or from the within Africa, we should have the joint advocacy for the same goal, for the same purpose, so that we can advocate for the same thing and have the same goal. And we should collaborate with our institution to build the Africa we want and the Africa we need by being mutually, by understanding each other, by collaborating together. We shouldn't consider ourselves as strangers, either from Africa, South, North or East or Central Africa. We are all one people, and all we have the same goal, which is to to develop our continent and to see the justice for repatriates in our continent. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And how about you, closing question, Valentine?
Yes, I just want to say that yes, we have had a painful past, yes, but sharing this past together must be a strength to moving forward. Africans and people of African descent can bridge this gap, I think, by building intentional transnational networks rooted in shared history, cultural identity, political struggle. Despite physical separation, they are connected by legacy of slavery, colonialism, systemic racism that continue to shape their realities today. Creating platforms for dialogues can foster mutual understanding and collective action. Maybe I can add that collaborations between grassroots movement, scholars, policymakers, and everyone across the continent and the diaspora can unify demands around reparatory justice, including issues like land restitution, climate reparations, and economic sovereignty. So to move from symbolic solidarity to actions which are concrete, these global African communities must coordinate their strategy, their action that challenge global system of inequality. Maybe these can be include supporting each other local struggles, sharing resource and expertise, and human capital. And last thing is that mobilizing around common cause can create momentum for systemic change. So by embracing a shared vision and a united vision to dignity, justice, self-determination, Africans and the diaspora can transform historical fragmentation into a unified global movement for reparatory justice.
Thank you very much for this intervention. So before we move, actually, because we have to be mindful of the time, so we're going to move to the Q&A, where I think you guys will still have the chance to answer some question and having some closing statement. Before we move there, I just want to summarize a little bit of everything that was just said here, because I think we touch a very important point, which is how to bridging the geographic gap reparatory justice. And while I make sure I have everybody's statement here, you can already start having your question in the Q&A. So Africans and people of African descent, as we know, share common history marked by colonization and exploitation. To achieve reparatory justice, we heard every panelist today, it's more than just reparatory justice. It's an essential bridge between Africa and its diaspora to foster unity, collaboration for lasting change, and as Sahadin mentioned, to shape the future. By working together, we can build the Africa we want and we need, a continent rooted in justice, resilience, and self-determination. The 4 point that was aborted right now, the first one that I've heard was strengthening diaspora connection. I'm seeing people that have tuned in from everywhere in Africa, and I'm seeing how people are sharing the link to the organization. Please keep on sharing the link to your organization so each of us can stay connected with each of us, because as we mentioned today, cultural exchange and community initiative and also digital platform can help us to bring us closer. The second thing that we heard today was collaborative advocacy for reparation, uniting across borders. African and their diaspora can advocate for, yes, financial compensation, etc., and etc. But this collaborative effort can hold colonial power accountable and shape the Africa we want and need, one grounded in justice and dignity. Share knowledge and resisted mobilization. This is an amazing example, the platform that we have here today on, and we want to thank the United Nations Office of the Special Advisor on Africa to bring us together, because this is what strengthens the Africa we want and need, a continent equipped to rebuild, innovate, but also think and grow in its own terms. And finally, and I think Valentine mentioned it all along, supporting local initiative. Diasporic support for local project is super important, and it can help create opportunity in many different sections, such as education, healthcare, but also economic empowerment. Investment in sustainable industrialization and job creation contribute to building the Africa we want and we need, a thriving and self-sufficient continent. And finally, building a global reparation movement. I mean, I think we all a part of it. And the last but not least was leveraging digital platform. Digital platform can bridge the geographical gap by enabling real communication, collaboration, and advocacy. This tool facilitate grassroots movement and amplify voices, driving effort for reparatory justice and shaping the Africa we want and need, a connected, empowered continent. And I feel like we'll feel like these efforts can shape the way African and people of African descent can unite to address historical injustice and build a future of equity, justice, and sustainable growth. The Africa we want and we need is one of empowerment, innovation, and freedom. So now let's move on to the Q&A. Let me just look if we receive any question for our panelists. It's loading up. It's loading up on my end, and okay, we did receive some question. Okay, awesome. So question for Tosia Chanel, with regard to tax. I'm not sure if it's for Tosia. Okay, but I'm gonna ask that question. So with regard to tax, some African countries are already guilty of multiple taxing system, putting its citizens under a lot of pressure. Also, a large portion of informal workers or people living from hand to mouth and even require social protection. What sort of taxing system will work for such country or sector?
Thank you very much for the question. The taxi system, like as I said before, the country government should consider the activities of their people. When they want to broaden their tax base, it should be progressively, gradually. It's not that they will tax those who are here with more, they will not levy more tax on those who are contributing already. It's proportionally to what they produce. So if the government wants to foster economic growth, they should try to consider that the people who are producing in the country should need motivation to produce more. So what I will not give a tax system for a government, but the government know, each government know their country and their people, so they should base themselves on this to levy tax so that it will be just for everyone. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Valentine, I know I was coming to you after for you to add on it, because I know this is also your research area. Go ahead, Valentine. You're on mute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so yeah, I just maybe we are not able to show the good or the right tax system, but the only thing that I want.
Hello? Hello? Can you guys hear me?
Structure
Yes, I
of their
think she has
countries.
a problem.
Okay, we lost you at some point, Valentine. Go ahead.
Hello? Yeah.
Yeah, go
Can you
ahead.
hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I was saying that in my opinion, regarding this question, the policymakers have to take into account the economic structure of their countries. You cannot tax everybody with the same tax base. For instance, if I am a smaller for the for SMEs, if you have too much tax, I think that people will try to get around the problem. So what will happen? Corruption will increase, and they will all turn into the informal system. And this is exactly what happened in the African country, especially sub-Saharan African countries. Informal system is growing up, and taxes base is still down. So government expenditure cannot, it's not able for the policymakers to have efficient economic policy, because the tax is low, because people are moving from the informal sector. So I think that we have to take into account this structure, and to find a good way to tax proportionally, and really take into account the informal sector in our economic policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Awesome. I'm looking at the question and I'm not seeing any question coming up. So what I will ask everyone to do is really a 2 minute closing remarks for today's panel and reflection on what we spoke about. So let's start first by Salahadin. Are you still here with us?
Sorry,
Yes.
Christian, there's some remarks, comments in the chat.
Oh yeah, let me
that
go.
should be acknowledged. Thanks.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I forgot about it. I didn't even see. So sorry about that, Moses Smalley. So I think Moses was providing comment when we were talking about, let me bring up the question before we do the closing remark. The question was focusing on what specific role should women and youth play in cultural preparation and national identity building processes. And I believe this is his intervention. So I'm going to read what he spoke about. So he said that I must state that truly many young people in Africa are lacking support and recognition from the government and other institutions that are capable of providing that kind of support in funding and sponsorship for young people to showcase their abilities to the areas that they are good at, talent, skills, and many capabilities that young people have to bring development in the community at their at their fingertips, but recognition and support is the biggest challenge that we have. And then the second comment that he provided was, and the other challenge I must state is that organization once start to develop in areas of their funding and partnership with other big organizations, they intend to forget about other developing organizations. These are also some challenges that has led too many people abandoning their dream and goals of making their communities to be developed in the gaps such as unemployment, lack of sustainability, access to quality education, etc. Only few who are resilient and resilience and dedication are the only one remaining struggling to develop their community and country at large, but still remain unrecognized. So these were the comment that we had throughout our panel conversation, which I have addressed. Is that fine, Mohana? Okay. So now let's move on. I'm not seeing any question coming in. So because I'm not seeing any question coming in, okay, there's a question here. Please, is it possible to get email from the African Union department that is responsible with Pan-African and diaspora so we can reach out to them? Okay, I'll just read out the question that we received. So whoever he's at the African Union, feel free to connect with Kamala. So let me go and see if there's any more things in the chat before we move to the closing statement. Okay, so we don't have anything more here. So let's have, and I'm going to chronometer everyone to make sure I'm just joking. So let's have the closing statement, and we're going to start by Sarhadin Bakor.
Thank you.
The floor is yours.
Thank you. So the first word was actually to have something to call. We need a call to action. So if you are serious about justice, economic, social, cultural, and environmental, then we need to stop speaking about youth and start building with youth. This is really important. We don't like ideas. We don't like talent. What we need now is alignment between institutions and innovation between the continent and its diaspora, between what's said in rooms like this and what's done on the ground. This is exactly why we are convening the Yes Africa Summit, the Youth Empowerment Summit for Africa this June in Marrakesh, organized by the PYU and Jadara Foundation. It will bring together over 118 youth-led organizations from across the continent to co-create real solutions for economic inclusion, institutional reform, and climate resilience. Led by youth, backed by the partners, and grounded in action. So my call is simple. Join us, support us, partner with us, because justice without youth is incomplete, and the Africa we want must be built by those who will live it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then let's have the closing remark from, and I'm going to read the chat afterward. Let's have the closing remark from Tosia Chanel. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this great discussion. What I'm going to say is that Africans must understand their past and then consider their present, that is together. Africans should be inclusive of women, youth, and the community with the help of the government, which should be good, with good governance and good institution to empower young people, to empower their population to develop and to push Africa to become the Africa all we want, the Africa we need. So it is together with our communities, with our youth, with our women, and with our government and institutions, that we can have this Africa we want and this Africa we all need. So thank you very much.
Thank you to you. And finally, Valentine.
Yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Can you? Hello?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes,
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 we
Yeah,
can
we
hear
can
you.
hear you.
Oh,
yes, yes.
okay. Um, how can I say? At the end of this debate, I think that one truth emerged with clarity. Sustainable development cannot be achieved in absence of justice, economic justice, social justice, cultural justice. So the insights presented by this panel, I think, reinforce this point powerfully. And I think, to the addressing poverty, inequality, exclusion, and all those issues requires more than technical solution. It demands structural transformation fueled by justice and dignity, economic justice, social justice, cultural justice. So I think that these three dimensions are not, well, cannot be separate. They are not independent. They are dependent pillar of a sustainable future in Africa. But moreover, I think that this justice, they have to work together with good institution and with an improvement of human capital, especially about the quality of education. I think that these are the lever of the sustainable development of Africa. They form a moral and practical foundation of the 2030 agendas and Africa's Agenda 2063. So development that can miss or that lacks justice, that lacks good governance, and that lacks education will be fragile, inequitable, and unsustainable. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for this closing remark. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So we have some remarks here. Fatima Teni, she dropped her contact if you want to connect with her. Jean-Paul Adam, the director, United Nations, shares something that I'm going to read. The conversation around taxation is very interesting. I will suggest that one of the main factors to be addressed is the availability of information. If revenue authorities have access to information about trade in a certain commodity, for example, it can allow decision to be taken about the most reasonable and relevant tax. Too often, though, in an African context, without data system on the subject of informality. Also, it's very important to ensure not just raise taxes on small business for the sake of taxing everyone. On trust needs to be generated that services are available from the state to allow companies to grow and reach a level where they can. Thank you very much to our brilliant panelists for your honesty, insight, and forward-looking proposal and call to action. You have demonstrated that African youth and researchers are not just advocates, they are architects of justice-based futures. Your contribution today are a testament of the power of innovation, resilience, and vision in shaping the path today, a more just and equitable world. The Africa Dialogue Series stands as a reminder that justice is not a static idea. It's a dynamic collective process rooted in memory, voice, policy, and solidarity. Today, we've not only unpacked what justice looks like, particularly the youth and emerging leaders of Africa whose energy, passion, and dedication will steer the continent towards its desired transformation. We call upon African youth today to take this powerful charge and build the Africa they want and need. An Africa marked by pride, confidence, and sustainability. You are the future. We are the future, but we are also the present. Embrace this. We need to embrace this responsibility with both hands, creativity, the determination, and the strength to lead this continent to greater heights, build the system, industry, and society reflect the values we hold dear: justice, equity, and sustainability. To do so with pride in our heritage, in our confidence, in our potential, and an unwavering commitment to a future that drives us all. At the same time, as we envision the Africa we want, we cannot overlook the importance of the informal sector, a significant part of Africa's economy. The informal sector has always been a vital driver of employment, entrepreneurship, and economic activity across the continent. It is crucial that we work toward formalizing and improving this sector, ensuring that informal workers are not left behind. By providing better access to resources, training, and support. We can empower those in the informal economy, leading to a more inclusive growth, sustainable livelihood, and thriving informal sector will be an essential pillar in building Africa that is resilient and economically sustainable. On behalf of the United Nations Office of the Special Advisor Office, I want to thank I want my deepest appreciation to our organizer, Juliette Waswa Mugambwa, Jean-Paul Adam, Matilda Moyo, Muahuna Hendogo, and our esteemed panelists, Valentine, Torsia Chanel, and Salaheddin. Your perspective and commitment to justice have enriched our dialogue today, and we're truly grateful for your participation. I also want to express my heartfelt thanks to our audience across the continent and in the diaspora today. I've asked you at the beginning to drop the flag of the country where you're tuning in from. I'm still waiting for that, but your engagement, support, question, and amazing contribution will continue to fuel the momentum for change that we're all building together and individually in our own community. So without further ado, let us connect this work with courage, with clarity, and community. The road ahead is long, but it's one we will talk together, we walk together, we'll talk about, and we will dialogue about. So thank you, and we look forward to welcoming you to future dialogues. And since we still have some time, feel free to drop in the comment your contact, your LinkedIn if you want to connect with one another. Thank you very much, and I'll give back the mic to Muhana. Thank you very much.
Maybe for me, before we close, is just to appreciate all of you. Say thank you very much for availing yourself and actively engaging in this conversation, which is just the beginning of what we all look forward to, starting from this year to on forward, as the future that we are all looking for on the continent. We are inspired as an office to make sure that we collectively engage with the young people, not only in Africa, but in the diaspora, in a more concerted and organized way on these issues that are really critical towards inclusive development for the continent. And the issue about reparative justice It's about resources, but it touches on the dignity that we, as you all articulated, which is quite front and center on ownership of natural and human resources. So that the call to action that us as an office we're looking for is for you as ambassadors to take this conversation from today to every space where you are, whomever you engage with. I was so touched to hear that, you were already thinking about the prioritization of looking at the local development, because this is where a majority of the Africans live. And this is a space where majority of the citizens in Africa and the diaspora have no opportunity like you today to be on this platform. So it's a challenge to you to take this on. It's a mantra that we are passing on as an office, that you, the youth, you take on this conversation and also challenge yourselves on what you can do above and beyond what the government can do to keep this conversation alive and to amplify it in a way that is going to transcend and empower all the young people in Africa and in the diaspora. Thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate you, and keep the message alive. Thank you. Over.
Thank you so much, Juliet, for your intervention. We have some questions asking for the registration link for the next upcoming stage. Hello?
I've just put the registration link in the chat. I've just put the registration link
is
for
in
the
the chat.
Yes. So please
Okay,
pick it up from the
share it.
chat.
Okay, I have shared again. And before we log off, make sure you're getting, everybody's sending all the page at the same time. So let's give it a few times so, so everybody can take everyone page or whatnot. Okay, everybody are sharing. Okay.
I just want to thank you, Christina, for this moderation, and I want to thank Matilda, Mr. Jean-Paul, and Mrs. Rama. So thank you so much for gathering us in this panel.
Thank you. And thank you for taking time to speak and sharing your insights. We look forward to continuing to interact with you and hope we can invite you to future events. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. The discussion was very good. Very much appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you
Merci
so much,
beaucoup
everyone.
à tout le monde. Bien apprécié.
Merci.
Bye.
Bonne soirée à tous.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci.
Au revoir.
Cela a été un plaisir de vous revoir.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci également.
Bonsoir.
Merci.
Plutôt bonne journée pour vous.